The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Not to worry about the short week, says Dan Quinn. This team is equipped to handle it. Well, we'll find out tomorrow night. Commanders headed to Philadelphia later today for the 8:15 kickoff tomorrow night in a game that really could be defining of their season. They can lose this game, still be in very good shape for the playoffs. But if they win this game, things get cranked up a little bit. Winning on the road in Philadelphia, which they have done before in surprise fashion. A couple of years ago, I think the Eagles were 8-0 when they went there, and they won. Eagles are playing well now. They're playing well defensively. Nick Sirianni was on the hot seat for a little while. Looks like he's off the hot seat. But Commanders go in there as 3.5-point underdogs tomorrow night. And, man, if a couple of things fall in place, Marshawn Lattimore is ready to go with the hamstring. Brian Robinson back on the field. Of the 3 losses, 2 of them have been without him on the field. So if he's back from the hamstring, that could make a difference as well. So there's a lot to be excited about with that. The college football rankings came out last night, and I'll explain this if you're not already up to speed on this. Georgia is in the top 12. Okay, Georgia has won a couple of national titles. They're always in the mix, but with 2 losses this year, there's a question whether they will be in the playoff or not. And even if it ended today, because of the way things are set up with conference championships, they would not be in. So we'll explore that, take a look at where things stand with that. Also, Lane Kiffin, the head coach of Ole Miss, who knocked off Georgia last Saturday. He was on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday, and he explained how they built their team this year to beat Georgia. They got other teams on the schedule, but it was how they looked at the Georgia game last year that helped them to form the team that they have this year and the team that was able to knock off Georgia in a home game last week. Also, Tom Brady making the rounds. Anywhere Tom Brady goes, they throw tons and tons of money at him, whether he's doing NFL games on Fox or whether he's doing speeches. And he did a speech yesterday where he talked about parenting. Now, this is a man who had a child out of wedlock and shares custody of his other 2 children with his ex-wife. And you could take his parenting advice for what it's worth, but we'll get to it later this hour. All right, Dan Quinn had a news conference yesterday. Doesn't usually speak on Tuesday. The schedule is he talks on Monday, he talks on Wednesday, and he talks on Saturday, I believe. No, he talks on Friday, I guess. I guess he doesn't talk Saturday. But that's the schedule, and then they mix in the player interviews. Also, we heard yesterday from Jayden Daniels. I'll play some of what he said. The opportunity was given to him to kvetch, and he chose not to kvetch. For like the 3rd straight year, Commanders have the last possible bye. It'll be week 14, which will be the weekend of December 8th. They will be off. In the meantime, they've got this game tomorrow night at Philadelphia. Then a week from Sunday, they're home against the Cowboys. And then Thanksgiving weekend, they play Tennessee before the bye. And then they would have 4 games left in the season. Some coaches might say, look, we had late buys the past couple of years. What's the league doing to us? We're all beat up. We got a short week. We got to go to Philadelphia. No. That's not the way Quinn went yesterday when asked about it.
When you get to it, then it'll be good. So I would say I look at it that way to say who wouldn't want a late bye, as the team goes. But as you're getting to that spot, there's challenges that go with that. I don't necessarily think of the team before they had one, but I do think about how it does affect some practices. If a position group may have more vulnerability to injuries than other, then you do have to adjust your practices. Having a Thursday game, it happens quickly, but I do think it favors a group like ours. This is a really tough-minded group. And so if you told them it was going to be on a Wednesday, they'd be down for it. And so I do think short weeks, it's hard, but it also favors guys who are like, hey, man, I'm down for the fight, and I'll be ready, and whatever it takes kind of attitude. And we got a lot of those kind of guys with a big, giant-sized chip on their shoulder. And so Thursday short, they would have done it on Wednesday if they had to.
I think that behind the scenes, when he talks to the players, I think he's playing this card. At least I would. If I were coaching the team, this is the card I would play. Hey, man, league doesn't respect us. League gave us a late bye again. We got to play a road game at Philadelphia after a tough game against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday. Remember early in the season, and they made a week-long road trip out of this, partly, I think, because the new ownership is willing to spend money. I don't know if this would have happened under Dan Snyder, but they had that Monday night game in Cincinnati, and then they had to play the following Sunday at Arizona. And instead of coming home, they just stayed on the road. They left right from Cincinnati to Arizona, and they won both games, and it paid off for them. That's why I look at this. Yes, they missed an opportunity, couldn't close out a 10-point lead against Pittsburgh. But if they win this game, and you got a messed up Dallas Cowboy team off a 10-day break, they got a little bit of a mini bye there after Philadelphia beat them and a bad Tennessee team, you got a lot of momentum going into the bye, and you may even have players saying, gee, I wish the bye didn't come now. We've just won 3 straight games. We're on a roll here. But, yeah, he's saying, fine. When it ever comes, it comes. We're ready to go. If they want us to play on Wednesday, we play on Wednesday. And that's just the way it is. We deal with it. And Terry McLaurin has been through all of this, going back to 2019 with this team. He's never complained about anything, and he's certainly not going to complain about a short week.
A short week, the preparation is just a little different, a little bit more mental than physical. But we're up for the challenge, definitely. Have a chance to go on the road against a division opponent. They've definitely been at the top of the division for the last few years, so it's definitely going to be a challenge for us.
It's just a short week. What are the challenges in that in itself?
Just correcting the things that showed up from last game that didn't allow us to get the victory. Obviously, the physical aspect of it, playing a game literally 4 days ago is always tough. Those are just the top things that come off the top of my head, but at the end of the day, I think DQ's done a great job of taking care of us, just implementing time for us to take care of our bodies, but making sure we get our work in. So at the end of the day, when you strap it up on Thursday, the excuses or the distractions are only distractions if you allow them to. So I think we have a great group here that won't allow that to be a reason that holds us back.
Yeah, that's the leadership, and he's been that ever since he came to Washington 5 years ago. The stretch here, and some coaches will do this. I think Ron Rivera used to do this, divide the season up into quarters, basically. Started here when it was 16 games. Now it's 17 games, but you segment out the season. That's not the way Dan Quinn wants to do this, and he's been consistent with this all year. You've never heard him say, oh, it's a tough stretch coming up for us. Never says that. It's just one game. And this is how he answered the question from Chick Hernandez yesterday.
How much of the conversation to your players is, here we are in the standings, this is who we're facing, it's division and wild card implications?
0. And that's not a coaching cop-out either, Chick. I just honestly want to stay in the pocket of where we're at. I don't want us to miss a step on this journey, and I don't want to miss the next step that we have to take, and that's this weekend and then the next one and the next one. So I'm having a blast with these guys. Not to say I don't want all those things that you're saying to happen, but I also don't want to miss one step with this group. I'm just kind of thinking about today's practice and Thursday's game, man, and I haven't talked to them much past that. It's just, let's go battle for it this weekend. And I did the same thing last weekend when a lot of talk was there's 2 games in 11 days and that. And I said, we just got 1 game this week and we got 1 game next week. And so we'll worry about next week then. And so I kind of stay in that pocket. I don't want to miss anything with them.
Yeah, I think they're looking beyond this season. Yeah, I mean, every season is a season unto itself. Crazy things can happen. Maybe Jayden Daniels becomes the 6th rookie quarterback ever to play in a conference championship game in the Super Bowl era. Maybe he becomes the first to play in a Super Bowl. Who knows? But I think what you're looking at with this team, and I think they've approached it this way, especially with the way they handled free agency. They had money. They could have gone for bigger players, bigger names, but they didn't. It's part of a process that, hey, if it comes a year early and they get to the conference championship game and who knows from there, yeah, great. but I think they're always thinking long-term here. That's why he keeps talking about journey, along the way on the journey. And I think at the end of the season, wherever it ends, and I think they're going to be in the playoffs, it'd be really a big disappointment if they don't get in, because even with the bumps and bruises, they're still relatively healthy. Outside of Jonathan Allen and maybe one or two others, they don't have any season-ending injuries. And with Lattimore being added to the secondary, if he's healthy, that's going to be a big addition. But I think when you talk about this team and the journey, I think the journey is not necessarily all 2024. And they're trying to establish a culture here, which he's done a really good job of. He talks about a standard, which is clearly here. He's got a quarterback who's not a narcissist like Robert Griffin III and got excited about everything. I mean, he's very even-keeled about things. So I look at what he talks about week to week, and it's more than just 2024. And part of that game-to-game thing is also part of that. Like, we'll assess where we are after, 14 games or something. No, he doesn't do any of that. It's all focused on the next game. This also, and this is kind of a surprise, but I guess this is the way they set up the schedule to make sure you have these truly meaningful games at the end of the year. They went to this like several years ago when you had teams that had everything wrapped up and started resting players down the stretch. So they put division games at the end of the year. That's why they're always closing out with the Cowboys. I think this will be the third straight year, maybe even the fourth straight year that they're closing out with Dallas. This one will be on the road. And here we are in mid-November here, right? We're just about there. And this will only be the third NFC East game of the year. They played two with the Giants, have yet to face the Eagles, have yet to face the Cowboys. And so here's now the big stretch of that. With 7 games to go, 4 of them are going to be divisional games. And that's something that Dan Quinn relishes.
It's closer to home for me because I grew up watching the NFC East and the battles that took place. So for me, loving football and growing up and to see these matchups, it's really cool for me because it does hit closer to home where I grew up, like I said, falling in love with the game and seeing it all. So now it's their turn. But to be part of this division, it's really cool. So it's probably more nostalgic for me than for them. But I do know that it's a really cool division and fan bases are awesome. So like taking our show on the road to go up and have another division battle Thursday night in November, like, come on, what are we talking about?
Yeah, and look, Dan Quinn is 53 years old. So if you look at when he graduated high school, which I believe was 1989, I mean, he's in the sweet spot of NFC East football. That's when Redskins, of course, were good. They went to those 4 Super Bowls over that 9-year period from 1983 to 1992. You had the Giants winning 2 Super Bowls during that stretch. The Eagles were a good team. I mean, all 4 teams in the division were good. I think Arizona may have been in at that time, if I'm not mistaken, and that was always the team that you could beat up on. But they were St. Louis for part of that time as well. But 4 of the 5 teams were really good. And so growing up, yeah, he saw all that in Morristown, New Jersey, and actually went to school at Salisbury. So he wasn't that far from Washington when they won that Super Bowl in 1992. And I think he's got a really good understanding. And as I've said before, I think your fandom reaches its peak at age 14. That's for me. That was the year that the Redskins went to the Super Bowl for the first time. They lost to the Dolphins. It took me a week to get over that. It's before you're driving. It's before you're thinking about girls, but you're not really dating at that point. If you're a sports fan and your football team is good, and here he was in New Jersey rooting for the Giants, who were really good with Lawrence Taylor and Phil Simms and Bill Parcells. Yeah, I mean, he knows what that was like, and he got an outside view of it. He did work in Dallas the last couple of years, but the NFC East has not been the NFC East in a long time. And right now, the way things look between the Eagles and the Commanders, that's the strength of it now. And the Giants and the Cowboys are an absolute mess. They're a mess right now. And so you got the 2 best teams right now facing off in the NFC East in a key game at Philadelphia. And night games in Philly, they're always wilder than the rest because those fans have an extra amount of time to get lubed up. They start showing up in the parking lots like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and by the time they kick it off 6 hours later, yeah, they're ready to go. By the way, update on the jersey for Jayden Daniels. You may have heard what a great seller it is. They've released some data from the NFL marketing arm, and the jersey ranks 5th in sales, the one for Jayden Daniels, between April 1st and October 31st. But that's going to change. In October, it ramped up to number 1. The top-selling jerseys, C.J. Stroud of the Texans, Bears rookie Caleb Williams, Kansas City quarterback Patrick Mahomes, and Detroit Lions pass rusher Aiden Hutchinson, who may be out for the year. But Daniels was the top seller in October. The others on the top 10, Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Lions, Cowboys receiver CeeDee Lamb, Bills quarterback Josh Allen, Vikings receiver Justin Jefferson, and Vegas pass rusher Max Crosby, who also seems to lead the league in tattoos. So that's where he is, but he has been sensational, and I think that the one thing I wonder about with the jersey, some of these are not going to change. The Cowboys, obviously, the look of the jersey is never going to change. The Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, that's never going to change. The Bears jersey, iconic. The Commanders jersey, designed by Tanya Snyder, I believe that they're going to have a jersey redesign soon. I think the uniforms are going to be changed. The name debate will go on forever, but that's one thing I think they can change. They've already added the gold pants, and I think they're going to have a more classic look than what was designed by Tanya Snyder, who is part of a regime that they want to put further and further in the rearview mirror. All right, we'll do some college football next. Lane Kiffin explaining how he built his team to beat Georgia, and they did. We'll get to that more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Much more on the Commanders matchup with the Philadelphia Eagles tomorrow night. More comments from Jayden Daniels and other players, plus some preview. You know who's doing a lot of media now, trying to get a foothold there, is Jay Gruden. And he is part of a podcast that has been put together by Colt McCoy. Now, one of the last people I ever thought would get into media was Colt McCoy. He was kind of quiet and shy, and he was kind of the typical Texas kid. Very polite, very earnest. Career kind of derailed by injuries. Once a first-round pick, but just couldn't manage to stay healthy. Jay Gruden, when he coached here, wanted to play him, wanted him to be his quarterback, just couldn't stay on the field. So he's now in the podcasting business, and he calls the podcast Clean Pocket. And Jay Gruden is a big part of it. So he watches a lot of tape. I guess he's trying to go down the road of his brother. I think at this point in his life, whereas in years past, it was helpful for him to be John Gruden's brother. It may be harmful now. John Gruden is still around. He's not, none of the networks are going to pick him up. I don't think he's going to coach again. But he surfaces from time to time. And Jay got an opportunity after he left here. I think he was like a quarterback's coach with Jacksonville. That staff got fired and hasn't coached since, and now he's in his late 50s. Says he's not going to coach again, likely, and what he's going to do is try and get into media. So he does a pretty good job, and we'll hear his breakdown in the next hour of what he thinks is going to happen tomorrow night in Philadelphia. Meantime, some college stuff, as last night we got the new college football poll out. The rankings came out, and it's a little bit different this year with conference championships playing a role. It's a lot different in that it's no longer 4 teams. It's now a 12-team playoff. And so what used to be a half-hour show on ESPN where there were a lot of tap dancing and filling, there's a lot to cover now in a half an hour as you put these 12 teams together. And the real difference here is the conference championship. So while Georgia is number 12 in the college football playoff ranking, they're actually number 13 because Boise State, which is going to win the Mountain West championship, Boise State at 13 leaps ahead of them because of that. So no surprise, undefeated Oregon, number 1. Ohio State is 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, Indiana 5, even though they're 10-0. You can make a case that Indiana should be in the top 4 and maybe be eligible for a bye. But until they beat Ohio State, which is going to be a week from Saturday, I think you look at their schedule and you say, well, they're probably not as good as a Penn State, and maybe not as good as Ohio State, even though Indiana beat a team that Penn State beat as well. So I don't really know how this is all going to shake out. But here's the most interesting part of it, is how they do the matchups. And if it all ended today, the top 4 teams, Oregon, Texas, BYU, and Miami, despite Miami a big upset loss at Georgia Tech on Saturday. That was a stunner, losing at Georgia Tech. They lost there last year, or at home last year, to Georgia Tech, but they beat them again. That's their kryptonite, and they lost to them over the weekend. So Miami, though, would be the ACC champ, and that would help them in terms of seeding, so they would get a bye as well. This is how it would project according to the way they ranked the teams last night in first-round matchups. And I never thought in my lifetime that I would see a playoff game in college football where Indiana would be home against Alabama. But Alabama has lost 2 games, so they would be the 10 seed. They would play at Indiana. Boise State, even though they're 13 by way of winning the Mountain West Championship, they would play at Ohio State. Ole Miss, and we'll get to more on them in a minute, but a huge win over the weekend over Georgia. They would play at Penn State, and that's a warm weather team playing in December in State College, Pennsylvania. That could be rather chilly. And then Notre Dame. Notre Dame was going to be behind the 8 ball all year long anyway, but by losing like they did to Northern Illinois, that doesn't help them in any way. They were never going to be in a position to be higher than 5th anyway, even if they went undefeated. But now they're seeded 9. They would play at Tennessee. So that's how that would all line up. And as far as what Ole Miss did to put themselves in this position, to put themselves in the number 11 seed despite 2 losses, they knocked off Georgia over the weekend. And we'll get to what Lane Kiffin said about that and how that all set up. But as he talked to Dan Patrick yesterday, they talked about the transfer portal, which initially he was against. I'm not going to use that. But now they've used it, and obviously it's been effective. And he said, look, this is what we had to do. We took advantage of it. We brought the right people in, and we're in a position now in the playoff. This is Kiffin on, though, how he would fix the portal, what he would do, because he said it is the wild, wild west out there. They're doing what they can to take advantage of it, but it's far from a perfect system.
Well, I think you just got to look at professional sports. They've been doing things for a long time. You wouldn't have multiple free agency windows, and you certainly wouldn't have windows that before the season was over you could go into. We have a system where guys go in at the end of a season when teams are still playing. So, that creates a lot of mental clutter for the guys. Even when they haven't gone in, they got other coaches calling them and trying to get them out of there and talk about going to other places. So it's a really poor system that way.
But are you more likely to look at a transfer than you are? And do you want a guy who's 20 or 21 who's proven, or you want an 18-year-old who's coming in as a freshman?
Well, I think it's really, if you just think of the system the same way as the NFL, you can go free agency, or you can go heavy draft, or you can go somewhere in the middle. And we still want to build through really good high school players, which we have a number of those that were making plays Saturday. But then we also go free agency also. Where it gets a little different is, in this free agency, you could get somebody that's got 3 years left or just 1 year left, because 1 year of eligibility. So it's a little bit more complicated that way than just, you're just going to go sign the best portal players. And, a lot of people, it's not like we're the only people that have done this. A lot of people for the last few years have done this, and it hasn't worked. So just like free agency and professional sports, or look in the NBA, you build these teams that are supposed to be good, and you can't buy culture. So you got to have other things in place and make sure that you pick the right pieces to come in, that they play together. And some of them end up having reduced roles from what they had at previous places.
Yeah, that's why they have to have contracts. It's absurd the way the system works now. I've been saying this for a while. You sign these players either coming out of high school or in a transfer situation. It's a 2-year deal. And at the end of 2 years, the school has the option whether to renew. It should work the same way. If you're going to pay the players, I don't think you guarantee them 4 years. The education thing, 4 years to graduate. Forget it. It's that's something you could take advantage of as a fringe benefit if you go to a school, because it's professional sports now. So they get a 2-year contract. If they want to leave after 1, there's a buyout in there. Or the two sides can come to an agreement. The school might want you out of there anyway. They may say, yeah, you're not what we thought you were. You're free to go. We want to free up the scholarship anyway, or the scholarship with the money. That's the way it has to work. I mean, what happened here was the NCAA spent all their money fighting against this. We could never pay the players. And the Supreme Court said, well, what you're doing there is basically slavery. So now the players are getting paid, but there's no system for it, and there's no contracts. And you've had situations where players have been promised something, and they don't get it, and there's nothing they can do about it because there's no contract. There's agents negotiating for players when there are no contracts. That's the main goal that's the main job of an agent, is to handle the contract. Most agents are lawyers or have legal services available to them. So on the contract, without the contract, what do you get? This is more from Kiffin, and this I'll get to a story about the then Redskins in just a minute. But this is Kiffin, the win over Georgia, a convincing win on Saturday. How it happened, and actually, he says it goes back to a loss to Georgia last year.
The best thing that happened to us is Georgia beat us pretty good there a year ago. And the feeling of seeing that, the feeling of how that game went, and being bullied around in really the line of scrimmages, classic Georgia, what they do to a lot of people, and made a decision that we got to change our line of scrimmages. Even though we won 11 games last year, we wanted to beat Georgia. And so we went out and we did that. We changed the size of our line of scrimmages, the twitch of our defensive ends in order to pass rush against them. But we also game planned against Georgia a lot in the offseason. So it wasn't a speech. It wasn't even stuff that was done that week. We spent a lot of time leading up to this game schematically as coaches to prepare for it also.
So this is a year in the making that you are, like teams would do this with New England. You would get ready to gear up to beat New England when the Patriots were done. You're building your roster to beat Georgia.
Yeah, I just felt that Georgia was by far and away the top program in college football. And I think could have won the national championship last year. They lost one game and to Nick Saban, which really outside of Alabama, nobody has beat Georgia since COVID, Florida. So they're the top program by far. So yeah, if you're going to go win a championship, to me, it's got to go through Georgia. So you better build your team to be able to beat Georgia, especially when they're on our schedule. And I said at the beginning of your potential of you may have to play them twice.
Talking to Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss head coach, got a bye week, and then you'll be at Florida, then you host Mississippi State. What do you think of the 12-team playoff?
I think there's a lot of good. I think it keeps a lot of people excited, fans, keeps teams motivated to be in it. With everything, there's a cost and a benefit. And so those are the benefits. I think there's a cost too that, programs are used to, fans are used to that 50% of teams win their last game. Now you're going to have, if you get in the top 12, 11 of them are going to lose. Only one's going to win their last game. So I think that'll be a little bit different. And I think they're going to have to learn, like any system, if you just start a playoff system that's really kind of bizarre the way it's put together about these buys and the 5-team and where you slate and you get a home game. And so I think that will have a lot of work to do, because I think what probably won't happen, the top 12 teams won't get in, different than an NFL playoff where the top teams and they got to get in because people are going to choose who gets in. And there's such an imbalance of conferences and what it's like to have to play every week. For instance, in this conference, some of these other conferences, you got to show up 2-3 times a year, really. And you don't deal with the hostile environments that you deal with in this conference. So I think that's so different that it's going to be really hard to get the best 12 teams, especially with the setup where, you can play in a poorer conference, win the conference, you're going to get a bye. And here comes, some great team in the Big Ten or SEC that's, potentially even going on the road.
It's Lane Kiffin, the Ole Miss coach, on with Dan Patrick yesterday. And he talked about building his team to beat Georgia off the loss last year. And it reminded me of what happened when the Redskins lost to the Giants in the NFC Championship game 17-0. This was the year before they went to the Super Bowl and beat up on the Broncos, and the great second quarter that Doug Williams had, and the great victory, the blowout victory that they had against Denver. But the year before, the Giants were the better team. They were the stronger team, and the Redskins had to play the NFC Championship game at New York. And the feeling that they came away with was, hey, the Giants' front is too big. We got to do something about our offensive line. I mean, the offensive line was the backbone of the 3 championships. The quarterbacks changed, 3 different quarterbacks, 3 different running backs. But the offensive line, the mainstays, was Jacoby and Grimm and Bostic. They had some changes. Jim Lachey came on later on. He was part of the last 2 Super Bowl teams. But, actually, just the last one. I guess he came in after they won the Super Bowl. But those 3 guys stayed together. And after they lost to the Giants, and they had a nose tackle named Jim Burt. Jim Burt was not necessarily big, but strong. And they felt like Jeff Bostic was being overpowered by him. So for the 1987 season, which would have been, the 88 Super Bowl, they made a change, and they put Russ Grimm at center. Grimm had played center in college at Pitt, and he's bigger than Bostic. And Bostic wasn't cut. There was no salary cap in those days, and you didn't have to worry about, veteran guys being on the bench and so forth. So they started the year, and Grimm was the center, and they moved some other, I forget who else was moved around, but they wanted a bigger offensive line. And Grimm got hurt. Bostic came in and played well, and they were rolling. And so they didn't make a change. And that was something that was an experiment that was maybe an overreaction there. And, while you thought, well, Russ Grimm may finish his career at center and Jeff Bostic is toast. No, it didn't work out that way. Actually, Bostic played maybe in 2 more years. Yeah, definitely 1 more year. 2 more years. Played 2 more years than Grimm and got back his position at center. Not a Hall of Famer. Grimm is in the Hall of Fame. Jacoby should be. But it's just interesting when you have this kind of reaction. In the case of Georgia, it was the right reaction, that Ole Miss did the right thing in bringing in these kind of players. But in those days, you didn't have that option in 1987. There was no free agency. You could bring in a guy from another team who was cut, maybe. You could draft in a certain way, but that was the only way to rebuild your team. Now, with the transfer portal, you just go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. We'll take this guy, that guy, and that guy. And we can get in and we can beat Georgia, which they did, and that was a huge win for them on Saturday. I saw this story, and it reminded me too of a former situation with the Redskins, very tragic one, when Sean Taylor was killed in 2007. And if you don't know all the background on that, Taylor lived his life the way he wanted to live it. And he lived in an area in Miami that was not a gated community, didn't have the kind of security that he probably would have saved his life if they had it. But several weeks before he died, he had a birthday party for his sister at his house. And his sister invited some people there, and they saw the amount of cash that he had. He had a large amount of cash lying around. And they thought that Taylor was going to be with the Redskins in a game that they were playing in Tampa. I believe it was Thanksgiving weekend. But he was injured, and he didn't travel with the team, and he went home to his house in Miami, and they broke into the house thinking he wouldn't be there and intended to burglarize. They intended to steal money from him. And as the story goes, he heard the ruckus, and he came out of his bedroom, and he had a sword in his hand. And they got scared, and they shot him in the leg, and sadly he bled out and died the next day. But the amount of cash that someone of that means kept around, it's kind of baffling to me. I keep like $100 in my wallet. I rarely spend cash. And I wonder, what reason does anybody really need to have? The only thing I seem to use it for is to tip the barber. Why do people need to have large amounts of cash lying around? And I thought about a story I heard about Will Chamberlain. Will Chamberlain, 7'2", had to have his clothes custom made. And Wilt, who was prone to exaggeration, said, well, when they make my pants, I make sure they make them without pockets because I don't need pockets. Wherever I go, I just sign my name. Okay, maybe that's a little much. But the need to have all this cash, and so fortunately, there's nothing that resembles the Taylor tragedy anyway on this story, but there were burglaries that happened at the homes of Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes just ahead of their game against the Saints last month, and they were out celebrating Kelce's 35th birthday, and according to police records, the houses were broken into. It's not determined what they got from the house of Mahomes, but according to a police document obtained by TMZ, burglars took $20,000 in cash from Kelce's house. This is a house that he bought in the last couple of years to get more privacy because of his relationship with Taylor Swift. And they do think that it's possible that the burglaries were connected. But the question I have is, why does he need to have $20,000 in cash in his house? What purpose is? It seems to me the more famous you are, the less cash you need. People know who you are. You can put down a credit card, or in the case of Wilt, you can just sign your name. Why did he have $20,000 in cash lying around? And that was reported there in the police report. No comment from Kelce or no comment from Mahomes, either one. But that's a real fear. And what Mahomes did, Mahomes bought a house. This tells you how money is in Kansas City. The house that he bought had a lot of land around it, and he's basically built a mansion around it. But the house he originally bought was $400,000. A $400,000 house. That buys you in this area? Bupkis. It had 8 acres. 8 acres, and he's now got a mansion built around it with a basketball court, a par 3 golf course, and a little bit of a football field outside. But man, I mean, again, I just don't get it. And it seems like the more money you have, the less cash you want to have lying around to invite that kind of a thing. That's my little soapbox there. All right, coming up in the next hour, more from Jayden Daniels on this matchup tomorrow night, and what Jay Gruden, the former now Redskins coach, right? Never coached the team as the Washington football team. The former Redskins coach now doing analysis on a YouTube channel. He'll give you his breakdown of what he thinks will happen tomorrow night. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. So is it too early to say that the Chicago Bears made a monster mistake not taking Jayden Daniels number 1 and going with Caleb Williams? I think it is, but the way the wind is blowing in the Windy City, we will get to that. Jayden Daniels talking about the matchup tomorrow night against the Philadelphia Eagles and trying to, as Jim Zorn said, stay medium, though he didn't use that term. And you know who's a really good analyst on football? Jeff Saturday. And maybe he doesn't get the credit for that because of his little dance that he did as an NFL head coach. And I think even he realizes how ridiculous the whole thing was when Jim Irsay gave him a call a couple of years ago to finish up the season. But, nothing really to lose there. I'm sure he made a deal with his bosses at ESPN once it was over, and it was going to be over. I mean, let's face it, he wasn't going to come back for another year and nobody else was going to hire him. That, would be a life experience that he would have, and it might help him as an analyst. I think it has. And he's really good, really good. I'm going to play some of the things that he said yesterday, both on PTI and our morning show on Sportsmanlike here on ESPN 630. But let's get rolling with the game tomorrow night. The Commanders, 3.5-point underdogs, are going to practice today. Brian Robinson is indicating he'll be ready to go. We don't know about Marshawn Lattimore. They're going to practice today before they get on a plane. I think it's kind of funny that they fly to Philadelphia. It would seem to me that the time would be about the same by the time you get the buses at the airport and back and forth. It seemed like you could either just take a bus or I know they've taken a train before. I think you can do that with the New Carrollton station. Why not? But anyway, they're gonna fly, and it seems to me it's got to be like a 40-minute flight, right? I mean, you just get up in the air and you get down. I remember when I was in San Antonio a couple of times when I was flying, I had to make a connection in Austin. Austin is 70 miles from San Antonio. The plane would go up and the plane would go down. No drink service or anything like that, but that's just the way that the airlines lined it up, and it was really strange. Like, I flew home to Washington, and getting back, I couldn't get a direct flight to San Antonio, but there was a direct flight to Austin, which then, took off again and went to San Antonio. All right, enough on the flying situation. Jayden Daniels last week had a game which I don't think they can have too many of them and win, at least the way they're constructed right now. Daniels had 3 carries. There'll be other games, I think, where he'll have, 5 or under. But he had 3 carries for 5 yards and was asked yesterday about what happened there. Was it what Pittsburgh did more than anything else?
I mean, just schematically what Pittsburgh were doing, pretty much disciplining the rush lanes and stuff like that. So zone reads, they're kind of taking me out of the zone read type of situation. So it was just more so just making the right football play.
And do we go to this, oh, my God, they've provided a blueprint for the rest of the league? Football's all about adjusting. He'll have some big running games. As far as this game being what it is, it's the battle for first place in the NFC East. It's, some might say, a statement game. They've had some games that have not been as tough. Their schedule, it did include Pittsburgh last week, but they've had some games that were not as tough on the schedule. This is as he's done throughout the year. He's looking at this as just another game.
I think people just know, like, it's a Philly week. I would say, no, it's going to be 2 teams that playing with each other for the first time. The record and stuff like that. But within the locker room and within the team, it's like, hey, just go out there. We're playing ball. It's another game, and we got to go out there and give our best. And I know we're going to give Philly's best.
Jayden, to that point, it's one thing to play at home and a totally different thing to play on the road. What do you enjoy about playing on the road, and how do you maybe embrace that villain mentality of going into another stadium and beating them?
I mean, it's fun. You get to go and visit different atmospheres and stuff like that. So it'll be my first time playing the Philly, so I'm excited.
He's new at this. He's done interviews, of course, over the years, big-time schools, Arizona State and LSU. But he never really gives you anything, you know what I mean? He's not uncooperative at all. He answers the question. But I wonder as time evolves, how we'll look back on his rookie year in the news conferences and how he's changed. Like Joe Theismann came out of the womb talking. Jayden Daniels, he's cooperative, but isn't going to give you a lot. Though this is about as excited as he gets.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited just to go to Philly, that type of atmosphere. Heard they got very passionate fans, so man, I can't wait. I can't wait to go out there and see that fan base and just experience that. And I know it's going to be a great venue, a great site, and we'll just go out there and see what happens.
And look, he's played in the SEC. So that's another thing about pro football. These guys who come in from atmospheres like that, and LSU, there is nothing like a night game at LSU. Now, he was the home quarterback there, so there's that. But the intensity of the college football atmosphere versus the pro atmosphere, a lot different. And, Philadelphia is about as intense as it gets, especially for a night game. But, he's going to stay medium. To use the old Jim Zorn term, he is going to stay medium. You've heard about the podcast that Colt McCoy does. It's called Clean Pocket. He's got a couple of his former offensive linemen with him on that. And he also, I don't know how the money works, but I guess he employs Jay Gruden because Gruden is a regular on it, and he does previews and look backs on games and things like that. So he's looked at the tape and yesterday released his preview of what we're going to see tomorrow night in Philadelphia.
And anybody who knows Philadelphia knows what they're all about. Smash mouth football, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, both of them can hurt you with their legs. Washington's going to counter with the pretty good run defense they played against Pittsburgh Steelers, who tried to smash them in the mouth Sunday, but they did a pretty good job. They played physical. They played 8-man fronts. They stopped the run pretty good. So I envision this game to be Washington trying to stop the run with loaded boxes. Jeremy Chin, the safety, is going to have to come down and play in the box, which will enable Philadelphia to counter with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and a lot of one-on-one matchups. Now, hopefully, Washington gets Marshawn Lattimore back from his injured hamstring and from the trade from New Orleans, because that'll help out on one side of the field. The other side of the field, Washington will have to decide on, is it going to be Benjamin St. Juste or Mike Sanastrell? That's going to be a very good competition moving forward as the season goes on. Both of them, I think, are worthy of it. Sanastrell played a really good game, I thought, against Pittsburgh, and he's getting better and better as a rookie from Michigan, who I like. So that's how Washington's going to have to play Philadelphia's offense. On the flip side, Washington's offense against Philadelphia's defense is going to be pretty interesting. I think Cliff Kingsbury's just kind of held back a little bit on Jayden Daniels' running game, the zone reads and the quarterback design runs because of his hurt rib. I'm hoping this hurt rib gets better by Thursday night so they can add Jayden's running skills in the offense just a little bit more, not a crazy amount. And hopefully Brian Robinson gets healthy. That's a big part of their offense moving forward. The inside zones between the tackles, Brian Robinson pounding them, and then obviously Jayden Daniels pulling it out, hitting Zach Ertz down the seam, or Terry McLaurin outside on the play actions has been their MO this year. Now, Washington has a couple tackles that are a little bit banged up, too. Cornelius Lucas is banged up a little bit. Cosme, the right guard, has been playing. Algretti's been playing okay. And then the left tackle, they're playing Brandon Coleman, the rookie, who struggled a little bit against Pittsburgh, which most people do against Pittsburgh when you're playing tackle. But they got to get the tackle shored up, get them healthy, and hopefully they'll get Jayden back to being Jayden, running the football a little bit more. But I really like this matchup for the Washington Commanders. I think this could be a high-scoring game. I think Quinyon Mitchell, the corner, is going to be trying to travel, or not travel, but he's going to be trying to go against Terry McLaurin or Noah Brown to be a problem for Philadelphia and a good thing for Washington. And obviously Darius Big Play Slay will be on the other side. So I think the wide receiver corner matchup is about equal, but I think when you add the fact that Jayden Daniels can run the ball and hand the ball off between the tackles and the play actions, I expect a lot of success for Washington's offense. And on the flip side, Philadelphia, they're hard to stop as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a daggone track meet. But I still think Philadelphia goes as far as Saquon will take them. Now, obviously, the quarterback design runs. But having A.J. Brown, they haven't lost a game with A.J. Brown out there. And pick the spots to get A.J. Brown down the field on his hook routes, on his post routes, on his go routes, on his double moves. Those will be the big plays that Washington has got to try to stop. If they can just not give up the 40, 50-yard play and force Philadelphia to go 15 plays and 80 yards, I think they'll have a chance to create some turnovers and make some big plays. But the big playability of A.J. Brown and obviously Devontae Smith, both of them, I think, pose a problem for Washington. I think my biggest concern with the Commanders is probably just another wide receiver to help out Terry McLaurin, getting some separation. Pittsburgh clamped him down pretty good. Terry had his big plays, of course, but Luke McCaffrey kind of got gloved. Noah Brown, he didn't really get open very good. De'Ami Brown had a big drop in the end zone. Zach Ertz is a little long in the tooth. He can't really separate like he used to. So I think they need just one more guy to really try to get some separation, because teams will come up and play a lot of man-to-man to try to stop Washington's running game with the zone reads, the inside zones, which they've had a ton of success with. That'll leave out a lot of one-on-one coverage on the back end, and they need somebody else to help Terry McLaurin in that separation range. I don't think the short week is a benefit for anybody except maybe the home team. You don't have to travel, but it is a short trip for Washington. It's an easy trip. It's an hour-and-a-half flight. They'll get off the plane. They'll be ready to go. And I know Cliff Kingsbury has plenty of plays up his sleeve that he can go to. They've got a litany of run options with the quarterback and things of that nature. And same with Philadelphia. They'll do a good job as well. It's just defensively, you'd like a little bit more time to prepare. But fortunately for Washington, they just played a team that plays a similar type game in Pittsburgh last week. So they're going to have to load up the box, play the same single high safety, the fire zones that they like to play, try to move their front to stop the running game, and then hold up in the back end at some point somehow. And then on third down, get after the quarterback, do some stunts and some other blitzes and try to do that. But it's going to be tough for both teams, but I don't think it's an advantage.
And he's kind of indicating a shootout there. The thing he said about Cliff Kingsbury, and the way he's got so many things up his sleeve, the way he put it. At the news conference yesterday, Dan Quinn was asked about Kingsbury, and I didn't really think of it this way because of all the time in the offseason that they spend preparing and working on plays and so forth. He says there are some plays that they have that Kingsbury tells him are not game ready. You know what I mean? I'd never heard it that way, so that he's in the lab drawing up plays, working on them, and he's got some that I guess they practice, and he's not satisfied with exactly the way the play is being executed in practice, so it's not game ready. And they do have 7 more games to go, so you don't want to reveal too much. Sometimes you'll run out of play to tease it that you might use it later in the season, that kind of thing. But, not game ready is the way he put it on some of the plays. I saw this story yesterday in the Post, and it's not anything that's on the big national radar because it involves Alabama Birmingham football. Like, really. I mean, it's not Alabama football, it's not Auburn football, it's not Oklahoma football. No, it's UAB, which actually dropped the program for a couple of years. And there's a long story that was written by Stephen Godfrey in the Post today about that and the reason that the program was dropped. It wasn't necessarily because of money. Some of it had to do with funding for the University of Alabama and a lot of politics and things like that. But when they came back under Alabama native Bill Clark, and he did well. He won 28 games in his first 3 seasons with a roster made from scratch. This was before the transfer portal where, you could transfer without sitting out. The city of Birmingham then saw what was happening there with the program, and they released funding for a new 47,000-seat multipurpose stadium in the heart of the city with the Blazers, the UAB Blazers, to play there. But Clark ran into some issues with the athletic director, Mark Ingram, and they butted heads, and so he left. Clark left in June of 2022 after a 9-4 season. In 2021, they'd only been back as a program for a couple of years, and he did a good job. So they made his assistant the head coach, Brian Vincent. And Vincent had another winning season, went 7-6, won a bowl game. He was a West Alabama graduate, 20-year veteran of Alabama high school coaching, paid his dues, and, seemed like it made sense for him to come back as the coach. Well, that's not the way the administration thought. And this happens all the time, not just in coaching, but in other fields. This thinking outside the box and getting hypnotized by celebrity. So who do they hire? Why, they hire somebody off of television. Trent Dilfer, who actually was pretty good on ESPN. I wasn't a great quarterback, benefited from being a part of a team that had an unbelievable defense with the 2000 Ravens, who won the Super Bowl. But was never considered to be an elite quarterback, and did, I thought, a nice job of analyzing games, looking at players. He was the first one, as far as I'm concerned, to first I heard say, oh yeah, Cam Newton, he's going to be a star in the NFL, because that was a new thing. A running quarterback. Did you take him number 1? Well, Carolina did. They got to a Super Bowl with him, so he was good at that. And obviously, the administration thought, oh, a celebrity, let's bring him in. Well, he'd only coached high school. He'd never coached in college, even though he played in the pros, didn't play in the pros. So he gets hired as the coach last year. They go 4-8. Attendance at the stadium went down. They had a 6-game losing streak that began this season with a 32-6 blowout loss against Louisiana Monroe, coached by Bryant Vincent, who UAB had gotten rid of. And now he's got Louisiana Monroe poised to make a bowl game. UAB this year is 2-7, guaranteed of another losing season. They're playing against 8-2 Memphis this weekend, a program that they hope to emulate. But because they had to lure Trent Dilfer away from the television dollars he was making and give him a contract, which included a $3.6 million buyout for this year, which is a lot of money for a program of that size, he's probably going to come back next year. And I urge you to read the whole story because it lays out all the details, but the headline says it all. Dilfer's UAB disaster in a class by itself. And I've seen it happen in my business time and time again, that qualified people are passed over for some celebrity name who stinks at it. And Trent Dilfer, while he was smart in analyzing football, he never coached before, never coached anything but high school, and gets an opportunity to coach a Division I team based on his celebrity from television. And oh, what do you know? The team is 2-7, guaranteed of a losing season. And all the goodwill that was built up by veteran coaches who knew how to coach at that level, never mind the 9-2 season. No. We got to have Trent Dilfer in here. And this is what happens. And I've seen it happen in my business too, by people who don't know what the hell they're doing and get hypnotized by celebrity. And that's what happened here at UAB. I'm a big fan of Jeff Saturday. And obviously they are on PTI because he comes on just about every week. And he and Tony and Mike, they really mix it up really well. Yesterday he was on, and, we've talked a lot about Johnny Newton jumping off sides, which essentially ended the game against the Steelers on Sunday. And, all the discussion is, well, why didn't they tell him, they're not going to snap the ball? Well, why didn't veteran players on defense say, hey, kids, sit tight, don't jump off sides? Well, here's the other side of this. Saturday was an all-pro center, spent most of his career with the Colts, snapping to Peyton Manning. Here's his look at how that play unfolds from the other side, and maybe some tricks of the trade that were done by a veteran quarterback in Russell Wilson and a veteran center.
Love it when a plan comes together. That's the best way, right? I mean, so offense, you get in the huddle or you're right, and the call in the no play. Ready, let's go. Everybody runs to the line of scrimmage, and then the quarterback will start going through his cadence. Now, when he does that, as an older center who wasn't afraid to break a rule or stretch it, I would, when the cadence says hut, I'd give a little squeeze on the ball, right? Little twitch, maybe, Is it in the rules? I don't know. I don't know if it is or isn't, but we do it. And the quarterback, his hands are under your butt. And when he gives a little flick, right? All of us. But let me give you one worse. Because when you're an offensive lineman, and this has happened more often than I would like to admit, when you jump off sides in a no play, and then Peyton Manning looks at you and go, hey, what play were you running? And you go, it's a great question. So we've all been there. We've all been there.
Great. Needed clarity on that.
Yeah, that straightens it out from Jeff Saturday. More from Saturday yesterday. He was on the morning show here on ESPN 630, which is unsportsmanlike. And they asked him about the upcoming games and which one he would like to see the most. And he picked the game tomorrow night between Washington and Philadelphia and had this to say about the matchup.
I want to see the Commanders beat a team that's over 500 when they beat them. I think a lot of people have, because of how well Jayden Daniels has played, this is a good team to me. If they want to break into the echelon of like having a real conversation of pushing in the NFC, all those conversations, let's get real. You got to go beat some good ones. And so this is an opportunity to go on the road against Philly, who I honestly believe is the second best team in the NFC. And so let's go take this thing on the road, go beat a good football team, statement game type mentality, and let's see what we're really dealing with. And I think it's a statement game for Philly. I think Philly showing that they are getting Jalen Hurts and this offense, and let's be honest, their defense has carried the weight since the bye week. I don't think 4 touchdowns maybe or something. It's crazy. 4 or 5. They're playing really, really good football. That's going to be a game, man. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, that and interesting to say hear what he says about the defensive matchup, because you heard what Jay Gruden said. He said this could wind up being a shootout. I don't think so. But, given the fact that their defense has played that well, that tells you something about where the Philadelphia Eagles are right now. Last thing from Jeff Saturday yesterday, and remember, he was kind of this celebrity coach a couple of years ago when he got his shot with the Colts in a crazy moment by Jim Irsay, where he called them out of TV to finish up a season. I mean, it had no chance to work. You just can't come in the middle of the season and expect to coach. But I think he looked at it like, hey, I'm never going to really get another coaching opportunity. I'm not really, gearing for that. We're not working as an assistant coach. I'm on television. So this will be an opportunity. Why not take it? So he did. He won his first game. If you remember that, he won his first game against the Raiders and should have beaten the Vikings. They had an enormous lead, and Kirk Cousins, no stranger to comebacks, brought them back, and they won that game. I think it was the largest comeback in NFL history, if I'm not mistaken. Late season game, and it was on a Saturday, ironically on a Saturday, beating Saturday. And so now he's looking at the Cowboys situation, and there's a lot of chatter about Deion Sanders becoming the coach. Some might say, well, the Deion way, drawing all the attention to himself. It's working right now at Colorado. I'm surprised they're as good as they are right now. But he's got some really great players, including his son at quarterback and maybe the best player in the country in Travis Hunter, who's the two-way player for them. But This is what Saturday says, and he says, don't think it's that far-fetched that Deion could go to Dallas as the head coach and succeed.
Absolutely. I do. Listen, I think the head coach position in the NFL especially is about hiring. You know, when you get to hire your guys, hiring the right guys, and being able to evaluate what's in your locker room and the guys you want to keep and the guys you would move on from. I think those are the two most important things. And as far as the coaching X's and O's and all that kind of thing, he's not going to be that. And no, you know, from my perspective, I would think he would do because he does hold guys to a high standard. And whether it's player, whether it's coach, you know, irrespective of what the positions are, I think that would lend itself to success. Would he want the job? And would Jerry give him the job? I think he would want the job. I'm not sure Jerry could tolerate someone like Deion being his head coach who is going to take that shine from Jerry, because he's going to take the shine, bro. Yeah. He's going to take, and he ain't scared of it. Like Deion, and he's kind of like, he wants it. Like, bring it. He's not scared. He'll stand on the platform and he'll make what his convictions are his convictions, and he won't sidestep any of it. I'm not sure Jerry would want something like that.
Yeah, and look, think about this. You may not think of Jimmy Johnson in this way. He won 2 Super Bowls. He also was a great coach in college, won a national championship at Miami. He's in the Hall of Fame in the NFL. The style that Jimmy used in coaching the Cowboys may not be that different from what Deion might use. And Jerry got rid of Jimmy because Jimmy was taking the spotlight away from Jerry. So would Jerry hire a coach who would certainly take away a lot of his spotlight? I mean, Deion is like the flame is like the moth to Deion or whatever it is. I mean, he attracts the spotlight that Jerry so craves. And the way Jimmy coached that team, he may have been a really good X's and O's strategist, but that's not the way he did it. He was a psychology major when he went to school at Arkansas. And he used psychology with his players, and he also was the CEO of the team rather than really that much hands-on. I mean, he made the decisions whether, to go for it and, onside kicks and things like that. But he had great coordinators. Norv Turner was not a good head coach, but he was a hell of a coordinator. I mean, Troy Aikman reveres him. And then he had Dave Wannstedt as his defensive coordinator. Both of them became head coaches. And what he would do is he would use psychology on his players, and a lot of what he did was through the media. He would say things that would motivate or, criticize a player. Deion may do the same thing. I think it's entirely possible that he might succeed at it, but I also agree that he probably won't get the job. I think in thinking about it, Jerry may say, because this is exactly what he's been chasing all these years. After getting rid of Jimmy, he wants the credit for getting it done, and he just hasn't gotten it, even with Barry Switzer winning, because, and rightly so, everybody said, well, that's the team that Jimmy built, and all Switzer did was kind of get out of the way enough for them to win a Super Bowl 2 years after Jimmy departed. Last thing is this Tyson fight, which may be off your radar. It's supposed to happen this summer, injuries postponed and so forth. It's going to be Friday night. I didn't realize how quickly it's sneaking up on us. It's Friday night at AT&T Stadium, Jerry World in Dallas, and it's going to be Mike Tyson, who's 58 years old and 32 years older than Jake Paul, who's not really a boxer. He's kind of a YouTuber guy, a MMA guy who's now a boxer. I don't think Tyson has much of a shot at 58, but he says, and he's hyping it, I'm bringing the devil himself to the ring. He said, he says, there are no feelings attached. My own mother should be very careful if she has to get in the ring with me. When it's over, it's over. But while the process is going on, my intention is to hurt him. I hope he has the same intentions or he is in trouble. He says he's going to knock him out. He also said the ferocity he will bring to the ring will make him unrecognizable to his younger children, specifically his 16-year-old daughter. Well, how many guys with a 16-year-old daughter get in the ring? And he's 58 years old. I mean, I was at his last fight where he fought Kevin McBride at the now Capital One Arena. That was over 20 years ago. I mean, really, I just don't see it. But this is the state of boxing, and there just aren't any known boxers. So what was a postponed fight got a lot of hype initially, and then when it was postponed because of injury over the summer, people kind of forgot about it. Now it's in the teeth of football season. I don't know how much hype it's going to get. I don't know what they're going to get on pay-per-view buys. But although Tyson looks like he's in great shape at 58 and 458, he is in great shape, unbelievable shape. I just don't see it happening. I mean, the quickness that you lose. If he was washed up in his 30s, what's it going to look like at almost 60? And I know it's not a real fighter, but good enough. I sense disaster here. I could be wrong, but that's my sense of it. Anyway, that's a wrap for me. Bram is coming up next, and I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.